No wonder people have such a hard time with each other. No wonder we are at war. No wonder so many marriages end in divorce. Welcome to NVC Life. I'm Rachelle Lamb, veteran NVC trainer and relationship coach, helping listeners navigate interpersonal conflict and ground more deeply into relational living. Greetings, fellow humans. In the episode that I released 2 weeks ago titled, Can Everyone's Needs Be Met?, I shared something Marshall Rosenberg had said about violence in an interview with Alternatives magazine. Socially institutionalized violence came about partly as a result of a change in lifestyle, not only with the advent of agriculture, but with an accompanying creation myth that evolved, we think, in Mesopotamia. In this creation myth, a virtuous male god crushed to smithereens an evil female goddess. The energy from this crushing of an evil force is what created our world. In effect, the switch from nomadic life to agriculture occurred in conjunction with the idea of good transcending evil, of good people ruling over evil people. The emergent ruling class put themselves in the role of being closer to God, and they controlled the land, which was now necessary to feed people. With all of this came a language, a way of judging who were the good people and who were the bad ones. This language glorified violence. It was used as a way to justify and control things by saying some people deserve to suffer for what they do. I'm not sure what listeners make of what Marshall says here, especially as he speaks about a creation myth where a virtuous male god crushes an evil female goddess, and that it was this crushing of an evil force that created our world. A few days ago, I came across a recorded interview with the great Jungian psychologist, James Hillman. And by the way, if you've never read or listened to James Hillman, I highly encourage you to do so. And for anyone interested in psychology, I especially recommend the book Hillman co-wrote with novelist and cultural critic Michael Ventura, titled, We've Had 100 Years of Psychotherapy and the World's Getting Worse. I found it incredibly jarring and insightful. So the recorded interview I'm talking about, the conversation with Hillman is titled, Only Beauty Can Save the World. The conversation took place in 2006 and was conducted by Layla Connors, film director, probably best known for co-directing the 2007 documentary film, The 11th Hour, which examines the state of the global environment and how the planet's ecosystems might be restored. The film is narrated by Leonardo DiCaprio and includes conversations with visionaries and environmentalists. The film is 97 minutes long, but there is a rich library of 72 interviews conducted between 2005 and 2007 with some truly remarkable people. One of them is James Hillman, and I find what I'm about to share especially relevant to the opening quote of Marshall's. I'm going to share the first 5 minutes of the conversation, and I invite you to consider as you listen that our relationships are profoundly impacted by the environment in which we live, and that a crucial step in addressing our relationship challenges is to recognize how contaminated our ways of thinking actually are. It begins with James Hillman. We've been separated from nature since the very beginnings of our Western mythology. Hercules killed all the animals, cleaned out the stables. That's what the hero is supposed to do, kill off the animals. Moses killed 20,000, was against the golden calf. The people were going to worship the golden calf when he was up there getting the commandments or talking to God or whatever he was doing up there. And when he came down, they had been worshiping an animal, so he separated God from animal. Previously, in Egypt and many other cultures, God and animal were one. This was finished with Moses, finished with Hercules, finished with Gilgamesh. So the very beginnings of our consciousness have to do with separating it from the animal. That's nature. Well, we can't be separate from nature. We are nature. I mean, our cells are alive. Our nerve fibers are alive. And the minerals in us, don't we take minerals every morning to keep healthy? What are those minerals? They are also and must in some way be nature. calcium, and magnesium. I mean, it's ridiculous the minerals that we pour into ourselves thinking this is not animated. The filmmaker asks, so do you think that we're able to have a consciousness shift? Because being separate from nature obviously hasn't served us very well. And it seems that there have been fundamental consciousness shifts in the past about how we relate to nature. So are we able to do that? Are we able to have a reconciliation with nature? Hillman responds, talking about nature is very difficult. There are 60 definitions of the word nature. So what we're talking about sometimes is an idealized image of I don't know what. But even to think that we're separated from nature is somehow a thought-thinking disorder. You can't be separated from nature. Why we think that way is the interesting thing, not whether we are or are not. It's what happens in the mind that likes to think that it's separated from nature. Does this mean that the mind or the human being thinks he's now more free? Or that the human being thinks he's now superior? In other words, what does it do for you to think you're separated from nature? The filmmaker asks, so what does it do for you? Hillman, what does it do for you? Well, it gives you a sense of superiority. That's number one. Number two, you can control it. You can put a dam on a river and you can chop down a tree and you can do any damn thing you want to because you're not nature. And that idea goes back to Descartes, where the world is a flat res extensa, extended stuff, and the mind is where the soul is. So Descartes created litter. He made the world dead, soulless. And so being separated, it turns the world into litter, waste, matter, products for human use. That's the advantage of thinking this way. And look what it did. We had 3,400 years of industrialization and colonialization and deforestation and everything else that's highly successful from the point of view of a separating from nature person. Now we're suffering the backlash. The filmmaker asks, and to deal with the backlash, can you describe the backlash? Hillman, the backlash. The backlash is disease, disorder in humans. Just the backlash in humans, the slow collapse of our sustaining systems. And this has very little to do with the fact that we proudly point to our longevity pattern, that we're now living longer than our grandfathers. That's not evidence of the backlash. That's an attempt to justify the destruction. The backlash is really, again, psychological, that we are so inflated that we've lost touch with reality. The filmmaker now asks, and how, because this is a problem given the biosphere, can you discuss the chasm in our thinking between the importance of the biosphere and how it sustains us and our actions in basically killing off the things that sustain us? Can you talk about the gap and why it exists? It's from the denial of death in a way of the systems that sustain life, and then what is the cure to that? Hillman, the denial of what's real. When I say what's real, I mean the actual dependence of human life on air, water, food, soil, sunlight, temperature. The fundamental simple things that we depend upon. They are one after another being or have been, I won't say destroyed, but permanently damaged. Our air, our water, and so on. Let alone the animals with which we live and which we eat, since we're up on top of the food chain, or have been for a while. It may not last. We are destroying as we move forward with our superiority, the very basis on which that superiority rests, and the prognosis, unless there is a change, is that we eat up or destroy or suffocate the things that keep us going, keep human life going. See, all of this, though, is from the point of view of the human. This is anthropocentric. I'm not even sure that makes sense. That's one of the fundamental things that has to change, is that we are not at the top of the pile or in the center of the universe. The filmmaker asks, so in order to save ourselves, what do we have to do? Hillman, well, I'm a therapist, so I'm very careful about using words like saving. And so I'm not really talking about saving or salvation or any of that. I'm talking much more about waking up to common sense. It's just a matter of realizing how dependent you are on taking a deep breath, or how dependent you are upon your glass of water. And if that is lost, then you are in some kind of irreal world, delusional world. So it's that. waking up to the insanity of the way we have structured ourselves rather than doing something in the world to make a change. That's the old-style American way. Let's fix it. I'm not talking about fixing it. I'm talking about making a change in the mind that realizes, my God, I'm crazy. It's a great interview, and I've included a link in the show notes to the video so you can listen to it in its entirety. So yeah, my God, I'm crazy. It's a good place to start, to acknowledge our condition, our deep separation from our living world, a separation that increases our sense of isolation, greed, competition, delusion, loss of touch with reality. No wonder people have such a hard time with each other. No wonder we are at war. No wonder so many marriages end in divorce. No wonder drug use is so prevalent. No wonder so many are on antidepressants. No wonder we're losing our minds. As I see it, what James Hillman speaks about is a much more expanded understanding of what Marshall Rosenberg is pointing to when he speaks about a virtuous male god crushing to smithereens an evil female goddess, and that the energy from this crushing of an evil force is what created our world as we live in it now. And I appreciate the broader context that Hillman offers. I conclude this episode with some final thoughts from James Hillman. What would make you want not to destroy something would be your sense, your appreciation of its beauty. If we start with the world as something beautiful, what do you do with anything beautiful? You fall in love with it. And by falling in love with the world, you want to keep it around. And that's the simplest answer to the problem of the world. Fall in love with the world, my friends. What a beautiful assignment. Thank you for tuning into NVC Life. For future episodes, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. For free resources or to book a private session with me, head over to RachelleLamb.com. Until the next time, stay sane, grateful, and generous.